This is your intro to polyester plate lithography. There's different types of plates that are used. Generic are called polyester, but there are smart plates. There are also pronto plates. There are a couple I know of. And keep in mind that what we're practicing now, the smart plate, is if you're using photos, that's what it's primarily designed for. It's using laser printer, not an inkjet printer. There's another type of polyester plate that's called a Genie Jet, but I don't have a lot of skill with that yet, so I'm still working on it. So the plate looks like this piece of polyester film that has a slight texture to it. It can be used either side or both sides. 8.5 by 11, so this easily goes through a nice laser print. So you start there. Keep in mind also you want to keep from touching the plate or letting greasy materials or foreign materials get on it that you don't want to print. So avoid doing that. So for my demo, I'm just going to show you the materials that I have found to be successful. If you want to experiment and say, will this work? I don't know. I haven't tried anything and everything, but remember, that would be experimental. And sometimes I do add, you can see with my drawing, I might add a little bit of something. If it prints, that's fine. If it doesn't, that's fine too. So the nice thing is about this as compared to traditional lithography, is that the materials are easily found at any art supply store. You don't have to go to a specific source for lithographic materials, such as this example. So this is a litho crayon number 3. So they come in different, just like a H pencil or a B pencil. A number 3 is kind of a medium softness, medium grease content. But it is not a China marker, okay? So that will not work for traditional litho. You want to get the little more pricey and sometimes hard to find litho crayon. So we don't need those. This is more universal, I guess I should say. So I went ahead and initially did a photo. I kind of damaged in experimentation my printer trying to laminate a film to another surface. But so now I have all this texture when it prints, but I kind of like it, like that. So I'm going to work with it. Also, keep in mind, number 1, I cannot tell you enough, please stay on the light side of your drawing in any litho process. Things tend to go dark, fill in, lose your dark tones as they become solids. So it's just much easier to stay on the light side of your drawing. It's easier to force them to go darker than lighten them once that starts happening. So I took my drawing, my photograph, just printed it out like you would a sheet of copy paper. And then I also added some toner powder here that I have dissolved in water in this container that sits on the cabinet, toner water mix. So you don't have to mix it because that's kind of hazardous. It's a very fine powder. So I've pre-mixed it using safety precautions in water for you. It's not bad if it's in a liquid state. But it settles out to the bottom, so if you do want to use this, you might want to mix it up first with your brush. So you can see I've applied it here, and then I've applied it here in a puddle. So that's what I did as well. Then it's important for a photocopy or toner to heat set it, stick it more firmly to the plastic sheet. So we have a oven in here. I preheated it to about 180 or 200 degrees. It takes some time. The little preheat light that's red will go out and then you know it's reached that temperature. So I've put it in there for a minute, which would be fine for the photo, but for the toner application, I actually put it in for 2 minutes. And you want to test it, so you don't want to be able to rub this off. It actually melts that plastic to the surface, in this case the Smart Plate. So that's what I did first. Then I always like to experiment with a variety of materials, especially for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to go through the things that I've applied here. So this is acrylic paint that I thinned with water, more like a wash. And down here, this is pure acrylic. This will be a solid. I've used some spray paint, spray enamel here, cut out a little stencil. I use that. I've used a paint marker, in this case Liquitex, this red one, right there. And I've also used, you can use different types of paint markers. This is a Deco Color, kind of this copper going through there. Also, a ballpoint pen here for some little nice fine lines, and a Sharpie marker. So all of that gives you a lot of possibilities for creating an image on a Smart Plate. So as typical, I did test another little Prismacolor pen right here, this little line. So I'm just kind of curious to see if that prints. So when you are finished with your drawing and photo on a Smart Plate, you can leave it at any time, come back to it. You don't have to do it all at one time. Come back to it, but when you are ready to prepare for printing, you will coat it with a very important, the most important chemical for lithography, gum arabic. So gum arabic comes from the gum acacia tree in Sudan and Senegal. Crystals form outside the tree. They're harvested and then they're dissolved in water that you see here. And so it is already a little acidic. 4.0 is straight crystals dissolved in water. So you don't have to add any acids like sometimes we have to do in traditional lithography. So what's the purpose? The purpose is when you apply it to any lithographic surface, that renders that surface so it will not accept any more drawing material, or the printing ink will only go to where the drawing materials were placed. It keeps all the negative areas clean, even the finest delicate tones. So to do that, to coat your plate with gum, I usually like to take a damp sponge. It's not that hazardous, but you may want to wear gloves. I should tell you that. But you pour on a little puddle, enough to cover the whole surface. So I'm going to do that now with my damp sponge. And take your time. There's no time element here. But I usually like to keep it going for 30 seconds, depending upon the size I'm printing. I've created. So some might say, well, how is this, what, is that going to print orange, or is this going to print copper? No, it's probably going to print the color I have on my roller, the color of ink I'm using. So kind of massage your plate, maybe applying in different directions, and leave a little film on there. You don't need a lot of it, but you want to make sure and look at the surface to make sure you haven't missed any areas. So there's that. So when you're finished, your plate is now processed and ready for printing ink. So you can store it, you can leave it as long as you want, or, you know, actually, I don't know. Is it better to store longer? I don't know. In lithography, typically it's good to let it rest a while, traditional, but I'm not sure with this process. But by the time you would get everything ready for printing and the press set up, it'll be plenty of time. So if you don't want to print today, right now, just put it in a drawer or shelf and leave it set like that. I also am going to tell you now, it's very important. Lithography takes a lot of patience and requires more time than almost any other process for printing. So don't get anxious and you're running out of time trying to print. Give yourself a lot of time. For 6 impressions, I would give myself at least an hour from beginning to end. So I'm going to set this aside and then I'll show you the roll up and printing.